Jamie Hunt.
Pat Heath.
And we are in ESP Berlin.
In a showroom.
We are.
Indeed. So today we're going to delve into the brain-frying world of prog metal.
And we are fried, having done what we've done. We're now going to talk about it.
Sure.
So you put a track together.
Yes.
What were your influences? What were you thinking?
Well, there's always useful tips and tricks to be stolen from Dream Theater.
Yeah.
And other bands along the way that have done their proggy stuff, bands like Opeth or Tool, or even bands like Symphony X, where there's different kind of meters and measures happening and things that grab your ear that allow you to explore different things than your kind of traditional kind of metal.
I think that's important.
Scenario.
It's not to lose sight of the fact that, you know, people think of prog as Tool or Dream Theater, but it goes from everything from the 1970s and
for sure
even before. It's a big genre.
Yeah, and people are still exploring it and expanding boundaries even now. So, yeah, it does allow you to think and orchestrate in different ways. So it would be a good world to delve into. So, do you want to talk about the first riff? Because you kick off the song.
Yeah, I kick off the song. So it's metal, this, isn't it? It's prog metal. I mean, I guess we can sum that up as what it starts with is a kind of ear-catching riff, and it's single notes, so it's not chords. I guess it's important to talk about the tuning because it's very low. It's a drop.
So we've gone 7-string.
Yeah. Drop
and
A, right?
Yeah, we've got regular E to E tuning that you'd have in standard tuning here. Normally you'd have a B on the bottom for a traditional setup 7-string. We've gone down to A.
We liked this.
Yeah, mainly I wanted to use that A as a tonal setup for certain riffs, but also there's a section where we're moving around quite a bit and doing time signatures, so being able to grab those one-finger power chords as you're moving around time signatures is quite a handy little thing, because you can, again, think about melodies within chord progressions a little easier, particularly when you're playing at speed.
Yeah, just sort of probably worth noting as well, you will have observed that we've got 7 strings with fixed bridges for this particular type of track, because it's stability, isn't it, really? That was what was cool when we were starting doing this. But back to the riff, it's based around whole tone scale, I guess, because it's a nice, confusing tonality.
Grabs your ear straight away, doesn't it?
It's an ear grabber. All right, and the riff kind of sits like under your fingers as a pull-off type riff. This kind of idea. And we kind of open with that idea and you come in with another idea.
So there's the phrase we're working to. I wanted to thicken that up. It starts with one guitar and I wanted it to build. So you could have two guitars playing the same thing, but it seemed a little bit kind of limiting and potentially would clutter the phrase.
Yeah.
So I wanted to harmonise that, but I didn't really want a Thin Lizzy fixed third type, you know, harmony in that sense. So I tried something I went higher and played a mirror image of what Pat's playing. So I'm playing doing something called contrary motion, where I'm playing notes from the same scale and I'm following the same shape as your melody, but the kind of the inverse of it. So as you ascend, I descend. So I played the open 6 string, and as Pat's ascending, I'm descending down my note. So I'm grabbing over to the 7th fret on the D string, pulling off, so you get that flat 5. Just dropping that open A in between, just to give it that kind of thudding weight in between. Should we try it together?
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. Yeah, so you can kind of hear that it's harmonising, but it's not a fixed thing. I'm kind of moving in and out of different intervals in the same scale. So you get that thickening effect, but it doesn't sound too obvious. So from there, we wanted to almost get the impression that the theme stays the same, but something shifting and moving, like a gear change around it. So loads of prog bands do this, and you'll hear this loads in like Dream Theater music, where what we're playing currently, Pat's riff, we've got very much like a dagga 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 16th note feel. Dagga 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 da. Now what we play for the next part is keep the same patterns happening, but the music around what we're playing shifts tempo, but our phrase stays at the same speed. So what we're currently playing is 16th notes as 4 notes per beat, dagga 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 da. The tempo of the music shifts, so we end up playing 16th note triplets against it. Dagga da 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 dagga da. So a really good thing to practice is shifting your click. If you do, you're clicking your fingers or tapping your foot, so that your speed of notes stay the same, but it feels like it's 4 notes per beat, shifting to 6 notes per beat. And that's to do with the way that you count the pulse around it. So our first riff is dagga 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 16th notes. Dagga 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 dagga. So what I'm saying there, my rate of notes is constant. It's just the accents are changing because the music around it is shifting gear. So we've got a phrase that makes it feel like we're now playing 16th triplets. So we took the pattern that Pat was playing, those little pull-offs, and created a pattern around that. Now my pattern is these constant 16th triplets now. I'll put a little flat 5 in there, and a little variation. So that was the whole sequence. You played something very similar, but just harmonised one of the notes, right?
This kind of idea, yeah?
So let's try it together.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Which is kind of nice, because when you go to the... Get used to listening to your rhythm section so you can hear those patterns of 3 or 6. So dagga da 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 dagga da, and then when it shifts again, dagga 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 dagga, and it's just accents moving. So if you can be okay with that in your head, you'll be able to write riffs that make these gear changes happen. So the next riff that follows that, because this whole intro sequence is kind of just like 3 extravaganza riffs joining up back to back. So the third part of that, the third riff, this is where the groove comes in. It kind of feels more like a familiar pattern, like the music's settled a little bit, because the metric modulation in the previous bit is just kind of creating all kinds of textural chaos, organised chaos, but chaos nonetheless. So this is where it kind of settles, and we hear a groove and a pattern that we can lock onto. So I've got this little pattern with little accents at the end. So I'll play it one more time. And that was my theme. So what I wanted to do is explore the idea. So again, prog bands do this a lot, where you get a theme and you can create time signatures by taking that idea and adding some notes to the end, so you stretch it out a little bit, so it naturally becomes a longer time signature.
Phrase, yeah.
So rather than try and say, I'm going to write something in 7/16 because you feel like it, you can create a phrase and add enough notes to the end. So it almost becomes like a conversation.
Yeah.
Like your theme is your statement, and then you have like a little afterthought that you just tag on the end. So you've got your strong statement and then a little closing thought at the end, which just stretches out that phrase a little bit naturally, organically. And you can add even more and stretch it out further, which we do later on the track. You could do the opposite of that and remove notes so that your theme becomes slightly shorter all of a sudden. And then you've again created a real natural way of dropping in these time signatures. But your listener hears something familiar, and when it is longer or shorter, they're okay with that because it's being weaved together by something that's constant, which is the theme that you're working from. So that was my theme that we're playing. So my additions were... Second time. Just a little chromatic sequence at the end. So the nice thing about that, there's a reason behind the chromatic thing, is that I've gone for 4 notes, it feels familiar, and the fact that it's descending chromatically is like a staircase leading you to somewhere. So when I land back to my riff again, that feels like it's supposed to be there. So even though I stretched out that phrase and the time signature is now different, by chromatically stepping down again, it feels like it wants to land back at the start of the riff because the notes I'm playing, we're okay with the fact that the time signature's changed. It just feels like a little natural stretch in there.
Exactly.
And the next time round, I take the same idea, but when I get to the end part, I tag on 8 notes to make it a longer phrase. 8 notes, so. Etc. So sometimes it's 4 chromatic notes at the end, sometimes it's 8. Each time that creates a new time signature, because the bit leading into that is a constant, your listener will just follow it. You know?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a second part to that as well,
Yeah.
which is slightly different, which I'm playing. I'm
harmonising.
Yeah. So it's a kind of alternative, maybe slightly brighter version of what you're doing. So should we try it together?
Yeah. 2, 3, 4. And those
cool harmony.
Yeah, those harmony notes at the end, they really stand out because we're kind of split in different directions. But to add even more expression, what I'm doing sometimes is sliding into those notes, just to give it that shape. So it can sound a little sterile otherwise, or like it's an exercise, but put some expression via slides and vibratos, and those little standout phrases at the end suddenly sound really like they're supposed to be there. Yeah.
The second part to that, because I vary it every other time.
Yeah. Big interval there.
Yeah, big
with
interval.
A string skip. And there's your 4 chromatic notes.
There's the 4 chromatic notes, exactly. So just to punctuate what Jamie was saying earlier about a longer ending and an 8-note chromatic phrase, I actually play. And should we play that part together?
Just the chromatic part?
Just the chromatic, yeah, just the chromatic part, yeah.
3, 4. And what's great about that, as I said, the staircase descending thing, it feels like unrest. It has to resolve somewhere. So it's tension release. That
well, it's going. It's.
Yeah, there's the
it takes
resolve.
you back naturally to this deep root note that we're feeling.
Sure. Now, when we get to the mid part of the song, we've heard that A so many times that it felt like it needed to move somewhere different. So we went to a midsection, which is a precursor to the solos. It kind of changes the mood and the vibe. So here, instead of it being, so kind of ferocious with all the kind of tense harmonic whole tone type things and all that kind of stuff going on. I've gone for power chords, something really familiar. So because of our tuning again, fretting at the 2nd fret, but using rhythm, we want to get groove here. So the pattern is 2nd fret, we've got open string. Again, stretching that phrase out, putting the power chord at the 5th fret this time, so we get a 5/4 phrase in the middle there. So just by adding that note, it just kind of, things creep around a little bit, but there's so much at the start of that phrase that's borrowed from the first bar that it doesn't throw us too much when that extra note lands in the rhythm part. And then we would follow that up with the original pattern again and finish, crazily enough, with some major chords. So we get... I'm playing this major chord by playing 2nd fret on the 7th string, 3rd fret on the next string, 5th fret. There's the first inversion of a major chord there, which gives it that just kind of uplifting sense of resolve at the end of the sequence and turns it around again. So the whole pattern, if I play that for you on the midsection, with some palm muting. And I basically follow that same idea under the solo, but to extend the ending again, that idea of stretching out phrases, those chords at the end, instead of being 2 chords, I go up a semitone and repeat that idea. So we stretched it out and we set up a key change because you end up soloing in a different key. So when you're soloing, the chords underneath, the same pattern we just heard, 2 frets higher, because it comes off the resolve of that ascending chord progression. So we go... the end of our solo sequence for the rhythm guitars, because that then resolves back to our familiar riff from the beginning of the song.
And what's so crucial about putting chords in is there's been so much linear stuff, so many single notes, so much moving around of a bass kind of instrument. I don't know, it's not a bass, but it's a baritone. In that register, in that register. That all of a sudden it feels like we need some harmony, we need a song. When you're soloing, it's so much easier to play over chord changes, good chord changes as well, because that's where the melody is. And you can play around with the scale shape as we've both done, and actually you get some, you know, melodic and modal movement because of the chord changes underneath, and especially with the modulation. That's when solos sound really exciting if you can play over key changes. So. So
speaking of keys, Pat's playing the rhythm under the first solo where I play, which is back in that 2nd fret, which is a B power chord because of the tuning that we're in. So my tonal centre for that solo is B minor. So as all guitar players do, you look for your pentatonic, in this case at the 7th fret. And like we said, we've had so much tension to the note choices and the choppy rhythms that to contrast all of that, I wanted to go really melodic with the solo. Which again is a real, listen to bands like Symphony X or Dream Theater, those types of band, even Opeth, they use melody and drop it in at just the right times as like a refresher to the ear. It kind of cleanses all that kind of choppy rhythm stuff and low stuff and just lets us breathe for a moment with kind of really melodic sequences. So using that idea, I've created this phrase where I'm using slides along the B string and then into my 3rd string. Now all of that's pentatonic, but because I'm sliding, it doesn't sound like a blues lick, but it sounds like really strong melody notes. So that sits really nicely over that chugging B chord there. And then we get to that phrase, that 5/4 bit where it's a little bit longer. So when I get to that part of the melody, I hold that note. I like to be strategic here about the length of that note. So I've expanded my phrase a little bit to accommodate the extra beats in the bar, because then that's when it shifts to that's a G major chord. The B's a major 3rd, there's our root, there's our 5th. So first inversion of a G chord. So because I know that's happening, I've shifted to, because it's all about the chord changes here, that's going into that modulation. So because the G's being targeted, I started to think about playing arpeggio type approaches. So I'm thinking of this chord, G major 7.
So
Right.
I'll play the chord under that arpeggio.
Yeah, so this is the G, right? So you hear that G major 7 sound? Then it resolves there to the B flat. So here, I then think about that B flat major arpeggio in the C shape that we've got right there. So I just take the top part of it. And I'll just hit a bend. So I tap an A and bend back to an A, because that's a really nice note to play over that. And then the key shifts to C sharp, where I jump back to the rhythm part. So what did you do for your solo?
Well, I started on that C sharp minor arpeggio because
that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, your arpeggios and your pentatonics relate to your chords. That's what Hendrix taught us, right? And he always had a chord in his hand, no matter what he was playing.
Rhythm or lead, yeah.
Rhythm or lead, exactly. In fact, it was all the same. It was just Jimi Hendrix, you know, that kind of approach. So you can go to an arpeggio, but I think how you use it, I didn't kind of want to just start going for a C minor. I mean, you could do that, but I was listening to the rhythm that you were playing, which is... is what I took from that, yeah? So I'm trying to go bam, 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 ba, bam, bam in a lead. And then I moved up to an inversion of that.
Yeah.
And added in extra 2 notes because there's there's another beat, right?
Beat,
And then back down. But it's about the rhythm more than anything else.
Sure.
All right.
And then we get to the ascending chords.
Yeah.
So I'm now playing an A major.
Yeah.
In the first inversion. Yeah, that is correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really letting the chords do the work. So I'm going to be, you know, quite simple in my approach here, and I'm just going to come down a scale shape.
Yeah.
In
it's the end of the double solo, isn't it? So it's got to have some fireworks.
Got to have a bit of fireworks.
Got to get that energy up there
for the finish. And I'm literally.
So play that part, which fits with this part. Then I'm changing key, so the solo has to change key with it mid-run.
And it was literally, we just went up 3 semitones.
Yeah,
too.
because at this point, I'm playing the chords 7th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, which is 3 frets up from where we started that lick. Yeah. So Pat's scale has to move the 3 frets to go with it.
Just what I've just played there. Yeah. So. And then.
And then resolve it with that final
that
chord.
Kind of thing. So let's try and get that all in one, that section.
Sure.
2, 3, 4.
Really nice. Then there's a drum break, and we just repeat everything from the start of the song, all those riffs again.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And that was really, I mean, it's an approach where you can be methodical and you can think and you can plan, or you can just play kind of cool, randomish riffs which feel nice under your fingers.
I think there's 2 factors to have in mind, though. It's what's the time signature doing? Because if you're breaking away from 4/4, if that's your go-to, your familiar ground, knowing which bars change, and when you've got that, as we've done here, adding a few extra notes or pausing and lingering on notes a little longer to accommodate that, and then particularly the fact that we're changing key at the end, what are the chords doing? Because that underpinned every harmonic choice that we went for. And sometimes, like, you can be creative with harmonic and arpeggio choices over chord changes. Sometimes you don't play the obvious. If you're playing over an A minor chord, you don't always have to use an A minor arpeggio. There's other options that you can go for. But when it's regular changes like this, because we're constantly hopscotching between keys via that ascending major chord, and then we're over Pat's part, going with the obvious chord sometimes is the safest thing, because we're only momentarily on each chord.
We are.
So if you're trying to go too out there with your harmonic choices and it's rapidly changing, that might be too many things for your listener to latch on. So don't be afraid of, in this instance, going for the obvious chord and just tracking the chord changes with your arpeggio choices.
So it's interesting as prog metal, because what you'd think is it's going to be all really complicated, but actually when we sat down to put this song together between us, What made it a lot easier for me was understanding the narrative of the song or the story, rather than going through each note on the tab and going fret 0, fret 6, fret 4, fret 5, fret 3, which is a really methodical but also very time-consuming way of learning. That's how you learn the riffs. What you want to look for first is the song narrative, which is progressive, complicated part with lots of kind of bass or baritone movements, middle section with chord changes and solos, and then the same thing again at the end, the repeat at the end. So it A, B, A. And if you've got that overall, the larger picture in your head, you start putting the riffs together and it becomes much more bite-sized to learn.
You know exactly where you are in the song when you're playing it, because like we said, it's just those 3 building blocks, the challenging intro sequence, the chords and the solos, and then a repeat of the challenging intro sequence right at the very end. So all your brain power can go on the techniques and remembering the little notes and the chromatic sequences and the string hops and all that stuff. If you're trying to play this live as a band, if your whole band just know these 3 building blocks, A section, B section, A section, you can communicate and make the challenging bits and the technical bits come together, because the last thing you want is loads of different variations and structures, changes like that. So keep that bit simple and it will pay off massively in the end result. So tight band, you'll be in the zone, and you'll be able to write some really great creative things.
So think about things, be methodical, but also be free.
Absolutely. Dig in with the stuff that we shared with you today. Do your thing with it. You don't have to sound like any of the bands that we've referenced, or if you want to change up the tunings or the tones and the way that you use the stuff.
Prog.
Absolutely. Do your thing, but there are some great tools for the taking.
We'll see you next time.
Catch you soon.